Hello, my name's Josh, and today is very special because MagicMadhouse sent me this enormous box, and it's a lot heavier than it looks, but let's see what's inside. Thank you for your generosity, Madhouse. So, what's in the box? Firstly, we have these really awesome Tau Empire dice. These are very exclusive, actually, very hard to get hold of, so thank you very much. They sell out very quick everywhere I try to find these, so that's an awesome start to the box. The awesome Crutox Rampages. Bit of glare there. But yeah, this is part of the new wave of the Tau. Well, the crew basically got a redesign and some new units added, so these would be cool to make. So we'll put some of these, maybe something together at some point to show you guys later. Also got a Crew Lone Spear. This is such a cool model. A little Crew guy riding on top of it's called a Calamandra, which is like a giant lizardy thing. That's very cool. Got some variations on the back there with different weapons, so that's pretty cool. But the biggest, most exciting thing they've sent me, which is kind of awesome, is this giant box. It's freaking awesome. The brand new Tau Combat Patrol. This is pretty epic, to be honest. So once again, thank you so much. So in here you get a unit of Fire Warriors or Breachers. It has to be Breachers for this Combat Patrol. You get a unit of Pathfinders, a Devilfish, and also a Tau Commander. That is a pretty epic box. On the back, you've got a few more details for the colour scheme. Now, I already have Farsight Enclave's Tau. So my army, you can see in the cupboard there, on the cabinet, it's a red army. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to put these together. It's going to be definitely a process. Put these together, take you through some of the processes I go through, and we'll have a cool little painting showcase. Let's see if I can do MagicMadhouse justice. But this is such an awesome opening. I've never been sent anything before, ever. This is the first ever. Fantastic. So thank you so much. Let's see how these look. We'll go through a bit of building, a bit of painting, and we'll hopefully get up to the end results. You can see how pretty I make these awesome fire warriors and robot men. Very exciting. Okay, so we're going to take a look at the combat patrol that MagicMadhouse has sent me. So it includes the Devilfish, Commander, Breachers, and the Pathfinders. So what I'll do, I'll take the kits out and I'll build some of them, and we'll try and do some painting, go through the painting process and see how it works out. So yeah, this is a very meaty box. Instruction manual there shows you how to build every unit. Really handy if anyone wanted to start out 40k, because it's just an army in a box. Basically, you can play Combat Patrol, which is a small version of the game. And in here we have all the sprues, drones, bases, the Devilfish sprue. My goodness, so many things. Such an amazing box. So this is actually the upgrade sprue that you'd get in the kill team for Tau. Now, some of you might not know what that is, but that's yet another format of the game you can play. So we got the Commander sprue as well. Some flying bases and flying stems. It's truly astonishing how much plastic is in this box. It's pretty awesome kit. It's gonna definitely take a while to put this together. It's gonna be a cool little challenge and a cool little process. So yeah, what I'll do is I'll basically put them together, and then we'll just see what they look like unpainted, and then we'll go through the painting process to see how that goes. So one thing I just wanted to show is texturing on your bases. So something I use is the Vallejo Diorama Effects Earth Texture. Now what we do is we can apply it to the base using a small tool, and it just gives it a nice texture. You can see all the shimmering, glittering from the different angles here. So that's pretty cool. The texture itself is like tar. So then all you do is you'd take a bit of it here and then carefully apply it to one of your models. Now you might have to do a few passes because it doesn't, it is a bit, it's very viscous. So another thing is you will get it all over yourself as well, but don't worry too much. It's a bit of a messy hobby sometimes. So you want to try and get it in all the nooks and crannies if possible. Now depending on what, oh dear, okay, so depending on how thick you want the texture, you can apply as little or as much as possible. Now this is keeps falling, but that's just part of the hobby. It will just drop from time to time. It doesn't really matter if you get it on the model, because to be honest, we're going to spray paint these after, and you won't actually see the texture paint, because obviously if you're running through the mud, you can also get texture on your trousers, your feet, and yeah, that's just the way it is. So yeah, once we apply it to all these models, I'll then finish gluing the bodies, arms, guns and heads on. It's just easy at this point when they're not fully created to apply the texture. Okay, so here we are with pretty much everything put together apart from the drones. I've left those because frankly I've got so many drones, and drones in the Tau Empire aren't actually models anymore, they're just war gear. So you can see here that with the commander, I have done him separately from his arms, guns, and jetpack. That just makes it a lot easier to get to the nooks and crannies. Well, after you spray painted him, and then, you know, we're going to start painting him. Also, in addition, with the devilfish, I highly recommend not painting that hole either. So I'd do not glue the engines on, and also the drones on the wings. Take those off, spray paint those separately. You will thank me later when it's easy to paint all these pieces. I've actually glued the burst cannon on. I know that's a bit boring, but I just find it's easier to keep it static when you're painting something. Otherwise, this is a rotating piece. And I also just wanted to mention the upgrade sprue in this combat troll is amazing. You get some awesome extra details, like this guy's leg standing on a rock. That was really cool for the breacher team. There's a lot of customization options available for these guys. Also, I've decided to go for essentially, I'll try and move the camera, but the what are these guys called? The Pathfinders. With the upgrade kit, you can actually get it so every single character doesn't even need a helmet, which is pretty awesome. So the entire team, I thought would challenge myself as well. None of them have got their standard helmets. They've all got skin, and the skin is a lot harder to paint. So let's see how that gets on. So what I'll do now is basically find some time, spray paint them, and then we'll come back to them all spray painted, and then we'll start going through some of the individual painting. Okay, so as we can see, everything is spray painted black. I have used a Chaos Black official Games Workshop spray can. It gives a pretty good matte finish. It does take a few passes, so bear that in mind. I would recommend painting them at different rotations. So you might want to spray paint them at first when the bases are on a box, and then come back to it, and then maybe put them on the side, and then lay them another side, trying to get all the angles. There's a lot of different ways to spray paint, but yeah, that's just my method. So let's get to start painting some of these awesome models. So before we start painting, it's always a good idea to kind of just adjust your workspace so you have everything available. I've got my wet palette here, which is just a really nice tool. If you don't know what a wet palette is, it's essentially a thin layer of foam with a piece of parchment paper on top, and it keeps the paint moist for a long time. It doesn't actually dry out, which is an awesome miracle, really, invented for the mini hobby. We've got an old trusty goo pot that I'm using for water. Just an assortment of paints we'll have at the top here, and a load of brushes. Now, I have a friend who only uses one brush, and I think that's kind of crazy, but I've got brushes for everything. I've even got, so just take them off screen here. I even use these silicone brushes, which are good for getting just fine detail on markings. You might want a larger brush like this to do line panel work for vehicles, and then brushes of all different sizes, and some of my trusty dry brushes of different sizes as well. These are really going to be good for vehicles and dry brushing bases, which we will probably see in this video. So then what I would do is, I think I'm going to start with the Pathfinders because these are going to be kind of interesting to look at. The models are pretty detailed. I'm not sure if the light can actually pick it up that well, but yeah, we're going to be painting some of these guys up. So normally I put the paint straight onto the wet palette with a bit of paint, but because this particular Mephiston red, which I'm going to be using for the base coat, is kind of watery anyway, I'm just going to kind of just apply it to the model as is. So I like to start with something a bit easy. I don't know, I'm just going to try and zoom in a bit here. So it's always nice to start with something which kind of like has a flat edge to it, just so you can get some color down. And it's important to establish color early because it means that it kind of gives you an idea of the end result of your minifigs. So basically, I'm going to continue doing the panel work here all the way around the model that requires the red component, and then I'll come back. Okay, it's taken some time, but we can see now that I've applied Mephiston red to pretty much everything that is required on my army, and there's grey stuff on the models that's used. I've used Dark Reaper for, and there's also some browns like weapon pouches that I've used base Morn Fang brown for. So we just take a quick look, a bit of a closer look at the models here. So it's pretty rough at the moment, but as long as you're getting down roughly kind of what you want to have as the red area, so the helmet, tops of the guns, the chest, a bit of the shoulder pad, you know, we're going to go over it anyway with multiple passes, so I wouldn't worry too much. So that's the breach there. I've decided to go for a bit of a cooler black and red look. And then in terms of the Pathfinders, so it's cool with the Pathfinders because they've all got their helmets off. And for the blue, for the Pathfinders helmets, I've actually used a Thunderhawk blue. Now this is just a base color. As I said, I wanted to go simplistic. Now obviously we're going to go over it, but we're going to apply more. We're going to apply what you would call a shade. Now this can be applied over a lot of areas that have detail, and you'll see once I've applied that how much detail this actually picks out over the flatter areas that I've done. I'd say for darker colours it's okay to use the Null Oil. This is a tried and tested shade that people love, but you can also use the Agrax Earth shade for lighter tones, especially I like this for leathers and more organic substances. So we'll take a look at the Commander. So the Commander here, fairly detailed already, but if you just zoom out a bit because it is a bigger model, you can see that all the separate pieces like the jetpacks and the arms, they're all separate just so we can get into the detail around the model, especially the head because the head is so tiny. Now, the next part I actually want to do before we apply the thin edge highlights, which by the way, I will be using this, the Evil Sun's Scarlet edge highlight. So with this, we want to go over basically the pretty much each edge you can see. So that's going to be quite time consuming. But before that, what I want to do is just get a brush and apply Eshin Grey lightly. So essentially, let's go through this. We will get our dry brush, go in, get some Eshin Grey. There's quite a bit there, so I'm just going to take some off on the pot. And then what I would do is, this feels a bit counterintuitive, but essentially get rid of quite a bit of it. And this is what we do for dry brushing. And then with the dry brush, especially, we will be brushing this pretty vigorously across the black base. Now you can see that it's picking up a lot of raised areas. Now don't worry, we will be catching the bottom of the models. Now I actually like this because I think things should be organic, right? So when you're standing on scenery, especially in a battlefield, you will get some residual particles on your feet, on just stuff around you, so don't worry about getting some of this Eshin Grey on your model. It can obviously, this can be any color you want, but I've just chosen Eshin Grey because my bases for the rest of my army, they're actually quite dark, but this is just always a really nice starting ground. Now you can see I'm being quite aggressive with this. Another tip I would say is underneath big models, you'll notice that the way light works is you can see it simulated here, in fact, with the lamplight coming from above, directly above. You can see that there's a darker area, can't you? Now that area is where natural light would leave a shadow, so you can actually leave the middle bit a bit darker where the chaos black resides. Something else I like to do with Eshin Grey is, just by coincidence, I like to also brush it over the darker parts of this model, like the black bits. And the reason we're doing that is because it picks up all of the little details, all the nooks and crannies. So it kind of just boosts your contrast. Now, as you can see, I wiped off a lot on this dry brush, didn't I? But it's still coming off. It's still picking off color. Now, obviously, be a bit careful when you're doing this, because with more intricate, detailed pieces, you can be picking off. You might be able to, you might chip stuff off, so just be careful. But if you think you've run out of your dry brushing paint, in this case it's a layer paint, just, as I said, dab it in a bit more, wipe it off with some tissue, and what I'm going to do is apply it to pretty much all the infantry and even some parts of the vehicle. So here we have the devilfish, which I've tried to base as neatly as possible, but something that has come into my kind of painting ethos recently is it's okay to be a bit messy, because if you think of soldiers and especially vehicles, they are going to see wear and tear, and we'll get to a point later where I'm going to show what I mean by that, but it's okay to have things a bit rough around here. Like you can see here, the seam between the grey and the red, there's some splash over, but if you think about how, you know, let's say the base undercoat of this vehicle in their real world was a metallic grey colour and the red was over the top. When the red starts to chip away, you would see underneath the actual metallics and the paint underneath. Now I can show you an example, a bit of a sneak peek, because I do have a devilfish. So what I like to do is, once I've painted a model, I like to use as reference. So this is one of my finished devilfishes, and if we zoom in here, you can see I've tried to like apply some streaks at the front here, kind of like metal paint that's underneath that's been scraped off. You know, the detail here is pretty decent, I'd say. It's not immaculate, but yeah, I just think when you add a bit of wear, it does look a bit weird when you kind of zoomed in, but you can see that, you know, there's chipping and all sorts. I try and actually apply that to all of my models now. So this is kind of like a sneak peek of what it will turn out. We'll also go over the freehand of the symbols here. Now, I don't know what it says, but it is on the box art. And we'll try also go on the finer details, like the windscreen details. A bit of simplistic lighting on the LEDs or the sensors of the model. I'm not amazing at these, but yeah, not too bad. And the drones as well, which are pretty detailed, and they do come off, which is kind of cool. So yeah, that's just a little sneak peek of what to expect. But yeah, so we're probably going to jump now to me in the future, because it will take some time, but we'll jump to a point in the future where we have some line highlights done, a lot more dry brushing done for all of our models to give it a bit more the wear and tear look. In fact, with bases, I might even put a bit of a dry brush of the Morn, that's a complicated word, Morn Fang Brown as well, just to add some like more muddy textures, because it's not just going to be black and grey, there'll be some depth to it as well. So join me in the next part where we'll see everything kind of progressing to the next stage. So as I said, don't worry about how rough it is, because look how rough these drones are. Very rough. I applied a very quick dry brush to these. Okay guys, so we've reached a pretty good point in the army now. You could, in theory, take this to a battlefield and say, you know, off you go. It meets the requirement of tournament. I think tournament play is 2 to 3 colours. There's definitely that. It's taken me a while to get all the details on, so let's try and have a look at a bit closer at some of the details. Starting with the commander. I'm trying to get not to get any flicker, but yeah, the commander, I don't know if you've noticed this, but the loadout is not for the combat patrol. That's because I needed an anti-tank commander for my regular games of 40k. But if you're building this for combat patrol, you need to follow the instructions in the combat patrol itself. But this guy's got 4 fusion blasters, which is pretty insane. They're basically melter guns, but the detail here is pretty cool, I think. But what we'll do after this segment, we'll go into one final stage, and that will be one of the favorite parts, is the adding the grass tufts to the base. Now, when you're adding grass details to the base, try and add a color that complements your main army color. That's something I didn't realize when I first started out as a painter, is the base should also be part of the model, basically. And if your base is a bit flat like this, that's fine. It's grayish, brownish, but once we start adding this green color, it's really going to complement really well. So yeah, I think the detail for the command is pretty cool. I think the final thing we're going to do, add the grass. We're going to add some, I don't know what to call them, but like super edge highlighting. And with that, I like to use quite a bright orange. I think I'll either use the Wild Rider Red, or if I'm feeling a bit jazzy, I might even go for the Troll Slayer Orange. But this is quite a bright colour. You can kind of see at the bottoms here, there's a slight difference. But before going to the very end of the details, let's just have a look at some of these other models. These aren't 100% perfect. Let's see if I can get a bit better detail. Will it actually zoom in? So when you zoom in this much, it really does show a wealth of sins, because although I think it looks pretty cool, just takes quite a lot of work to get all the things on, especially on these tiny models. So you can see here on the darker part of the Pulse Carbine, I've got the gold there. If you're doing any gold, I would always recommend doing a bit of silver first, just to lighten it from black to black, silver, and gold. The mid part of the carbine does use more the washers. And yeah, it's just a case of going over the details over and over again. I mean, it depends how much OCD you have. I mean, I've got quite a lot of OCD, to be honest. And then we'll take a look at one of these breaches, which I really like the model of. I tried to make them look a bit more sinister. So I've gone for more of a black shoulder pad, as opposed to these Pathfinders don't actually have a big shoulder pad. So yeah, that's how they differ. And then a closer look at the devilfish. Let's zoom out a bit for that, which is just really cool. And I think at this point, as I said, you could literally just take this onto the battlefield, but you'll see after the final round of highlights, it's just going to pop. And I like them to stand out a bit on the battlefield, because you have to remember that your opponents will be looking at your models from a way away. And to be honest, most people don't care. It's just nice to have things looking good. I mean, it's like these shoulder pads. Like, I didn't have to. Oh, a bit of flicker there. I didn't have to go for, doing these shoulder pads that neat, but I just think it just, if you're going to do something, you might as well put some detail into it. But yeah, we're going to go to the next stage now, go for some final highlights using a thin detail brush around the edges, the very extreme edges. We only really want to hit like the top parts of the model where the light would hit the most. So where the sun would shine, let's say on the model itself. But yeah, let's see how we get to how that's going to look in the final stage, basically. Okay, so here we are all finished. Just take a closer look at some of these models. So this was really fun to paint. Devilfish actually has a lot of details, and it's hard to believe the model is actually it's about 20 years old, this sculpt. This is one of the original kits that first came out when Tau first arrived on the scene. So got the nice little windshield there, put some extra details on. Fully painted, ready for battle. And then we also have the Tau Commander. It looks pretty cool. So as I said, this is for regular games of 40k, but you can paint it up and create it for Combat Patrol. You basically get to choose. It's just a nice addition to your army if you didn't want to get into Combat Patrol itself. And then we've got some individual troopers here. See if I can zoom in a little bit more. So yeah, pretty cool. I think what I'll do is also at the end, I'll put up some high quality photos just so you can see what I've done a bit closer. But yeah, these guys are pretty cool. And thank you once again to MagicMadhouse for providing me with this awesome box.